about thin slicing today, and that is based on a term that Malcolm Gladwell used in his book Blink, and the subtitle of Blink was, or is, Thinking Without Thinking. And thin slicing is a term that's used in psychology and philosophy to describe the ability to find patterns in events based only on thin slices or narrow windows of experience. The term means making very quick inferences from the state of non-attention characteristics or details of an individual or situation with minimal amount of information. So it's like making a snap decision with very little information. I had an old boss who was quite a character. He was a recovering alcoholic, and he had this volatile temper that really was scary often to me. And we were having this conversation, and when he lost his temper, it was like he would spew everybody in the area, you know. So I was a little afraid of him. Not a little afraid of him, I was a lot afraid of him. And so we were talking about this something or other, I can't even remember what it was, and he said to me, well, how do you know that? How do you know anything, really? How do you know that you know? I was just flummoxed. I couldn't even think how I had put together the idea that I was proposing. And he ultimately agreed that that was a good idea. But the question of how do you know that in such an aggressive way was something that set me to thinking. How do we know that we know? And where does that knowing come from? But what Malcolm Gladwell has said is that people make decisions on very little information, and more often than not, those decisions are the wisest decisions. Trusting those little slices, those thin slices of information to come together, because mostly they are intuitive. And when we make intuitive decisions, it is that we are connected with the divine. I had a conversation last week with someone, and she was concerned about not being able to go to Tahoe because the weather was bad, and she really, really had wanted to go, and she couldn't decide whether to try it, make a choice, you know, try it or not, be safe or take a chance. And so I said to her, you know, there are never any bad decisions. Decisions are just decisions. We don't make bad decisions, we make decisions. And we'll never know whether the decision that we made was the best decision or the worst decision, because life happens and things transpire, and we don't have all of the information. So making a decision and trusting yourself to make a decision is fine, because we use this thin slicing of information to make those decisions. Ernest Holmes said in his text, since the individual's subjective mind is the storehouse of memory, it retains all that the eye has seen, the ear heard, and the mentality conceived. Since it contains much that the outer man never consciously knew, and is the receptacle of much of the race knowledge through unconscious communication, it must, and does, have a knowledge that far surpasses the conscious facilities. So when we make decisions, we can know that all that we have ever heard, all we've ever thought, all we've ever experienced comes together in a confluence to give us the wisdom to make the decision that we make, and it can be made that quickly, and we can trust it because we are part of the greater consciousness, and the greater consciousness has all wisdom that's available. He says further, each person has a mental atmosphere which is the result of all that he has thought, said, and done, and consciously or unconsciously perceived. The mental atmosphere is very real, and is that subtle influence which constitutes the power of personal attraction. For personal attraction has but little to do with looks. So I think that he was talking about love at first sight, or connection at first sight, or when you encounter someone for the first time, immediately and intuitively you know how this person is going to fit into your life, or how you're going to resonate with this person. It is that thin slice of information that you have that immediately allows you to know someone deeply and richly, and then you spend time with them and fill in the blanks. But that first initial concept is very powerful, and it is the thin slicing. Now, sometimes the brain can play tricks on you, and they've done all kinds of experiments about how the brain can be misled. But the brain can be misled, but the heart is seldom misled. You can trust your heart. Deepak Chopra, in his book, The Book of Secrets, Unlocking the Hidden Dimensions of Your Life, said this, and he sums it up for me as far as I can say it better. If you obsess over whether you're making the right decision, you are basically assuming that the universe will reward you for one thing and punish you for another. Let me read that again. If you obsess over whether you're making the right decision, you are basically assuming that the universe will reward you for one thing and punish you for another. The universe has no fixed agenda. Once you make any decision, it works around that decision. There is no right or wrong, only a series of possibilities that shift with each thought, feeling, and action that you experience. If this sounds too mystical, refer again to the body. Every significant, vital sign, body temperature, heart rate, oxygen consumption, hormonal level, brain activity, and so on, alters. All of your body functions alters the moment you decide to do anything. Decisions are signals telling your body, mind, and environment to move in a certain direction. So whatever you decide, the universe and your body and circumstances move to support that decision. So how do we go wrong? We go wrong when we start doubting ourselves, and when we start thinking of all of the possibilities that can go wrong. Because remember, what you think is what you get. And when we start thinking the yes buts, when we start doubting ourselves, doubting our connection, and doubting the divine inner action of the universe, That's what we're setting into motion. So being indecisive, doubting our decisions is a prayer, just like any other prayer. A thought is a prayer, even negative thoughts. So what do we do about that? There's a truth that we are part of the mass consciousness, and that we have been exposed to so many different snippets of information. I think a lot of us, I'm using this example very broadly, but a lot of us were raised in the era of the Second World War, when the cartoons showed us character types of Asian people. Do you remember that, with the big broad grin and maybe glasses, thick glasses?
And buck teeth.
And yes, yeah. And those are the kinds of visions and concepts that are deeply set in our mental atmosphere. And that's only a small example. I was raised with movies of cowboys and Indians. I think we all had that exposure of cowboys and Indians, and always the cowboys had on the white hat and the Indians were the bad guys. And that's what we're so often enculturated with. And those are not the truth. We know that is not true. We've come as a culture to reevaluate our belief systems. So how do we take the time to challenge those collective conscious visions that have been so deeply entrenched in so many of us? And they're continuing, obviously. We often mistake our idea of what reality is, or how circumstances are, for those kind of shorthanded, quick flashes that rest and reside in the collective consciousness. And so when I say that our minds can trick us, those are the stumbling blocks. Those are the places that we really need to take time and evaluate and examine what shows up for us in our belief systems. So how do we do that? We can take time each day to check with ourselves, to review our thoughts and thinking patterns for the day, for our own personal evaluation. At the end of the day, when you're taking inventory of the day, think about the things that have shown up for you that may be thinking cliches around our belief system. Ask yourself on a regular basis, every day, is this what I actually know to be true? Is this what I believe to be true? Or am I buying into some mass consciousness of the way that life shows up? Taking a daily inventory of our mental atmosphere leads to a higher expression of consciousness. Once we become aware of our thoughts and patterns of thinking, especially those not planted by us consciously, which do not serve us or humankind, we can replace them with higher vibrational thoughts. Thoughts that lead to the expression of our spiritual magnificence, vibrancy, and boldness. Reminding us that each one of us is the collective consciousness. We're it. And when each of us shift our belief systems, shift our understanding, then that has a profound effect on the collective consciousness. So examining our thoughts and examining the things that we believe to be true and being clear on that truth. Is this what I believe, or is this what I've been taught to believe? When I was a little kid, I was outside playing. And I will say that my family, my mother and my grandmother were from the South, and they had some preconceived ideas about ethnic groups. Fortunately, my mother was able to challenge those in her later life. But I was outside playing, and the garbage man came, and he and I were chit-chatting. We were having a good conversation. He was a nice man who was talking to a little girl. Well, my mother came storming out of the house because he was not Caucasian. And she got me in the house. Well, what happened from all of that was that I was not afraid of garbage men. I was afraid of garbage trucks. And into my rather mature life, every time I saw a garbage truck, I would have this point of disquiet. And it was a misplaced fear of garbage trucks. And finally, it came to me to remember the incident with my mom and remember that that was just my mom's experience and it had nothing to do with garbage trucks. So I am no longer afraid of garbage trucks. But how silly that is, and how we just ingest ideas and thoughts and make them part of our consciousness. So my point is to take each day and evaluate what your belief systems are. Your belief systems are. I invite you to begin taking note of your thoughts and asking yourself, from where did this thought come? And is this thought true for me today? Is this thought true for me today? These thoughts don't have to be shared with anybody. It's important for each one of us to take note of them in order that we might replace them with godly thoughts that foster inclusivity and wholeness. Maybe you want to carry a journal around and jot down some ideas or record them in a notebook. Review your thoughts and review your log at the end of the day and begin to replace the unwanted thoughts with conscious thoughts and begin working on your portion of the collective consciousness, knowing that there is deep wisdom and knowing that we can change our belief system. So as far as decisions go, here we've talked about the flip of the coin, when the coin lands, judging how you feel about the way the coin lands. There's another suggestion that Josephine Angelini has that I like. So what can you take, she asks. Decide which of the two options is harder and do the other. Let me repeat that. Decide which of the two options is harder and do the other. That way, no matter how hard your choice turns out to be, at least you can find comfort in knowing you're avoiding something even worse. I think that's a good philosophy. I think that's a good idea. So taking the easy path, so to speak, knowing that you could have chosen the harder one, and at least you're not doing that one. David Jimimel says, trust your instincts and make judgments on what your heart tells you. The heart will never betray you. And that's the essence of what we're talking about here, thin slicing, making decisions, trusting when you have made a decision that it is the right one. Don't second guess yourself. Don't say to yourself, oh, I could have done this or this or this or this. Just knowing that it's all unfolding in perfection. And your heart knows. Trusting your heart to know. So basically, thin slicing is the ability to make snap judgments based on little information, but trusting your instincts and your heart. We can all trust ourselves to make the right decision. There are no bad decisions. There are no wrong decisions to be made because we never know the rest of the story. There's an affirmation that Elizabeth Rowley wrote. She's the staff minister at the Center for Spiritual Living in Peninsula, California. She says, today I keep my mind stayed on the Spirit. All of my thoughts lead to my greatest good and the greatest good for this planet. There's no limit to the good which is mine. Let me read that again. She says, today I keep my mind stayed on the Spirit. All of my thoughts lead to the greatest good and the greatest good for this planet. There's no limit to the good which is mine. So I invite you to trust your heart and trust your decisions, knowing that they're always the right decision. I love you all. Namaste. So I would invite Kate and Steve to join me as we hold this community in prayer. I move to that place where all of the deepest, richest knowledge and wisdom resides. I move to my heart connection, connecting with the universe and all that is good. I absolutely know that I can trust my heart to make wonderful, rich, loving decisions. I allow myself to be aware that I am connected with all that is. I'm connected with all of the love and the wisdom and the knowledge of the universe. And when I make a snap decision, when I make a snap judgment, from that heart space, I know that I can trust it. I allow myself to make decisions that are in alignment with the highest and best good. I allow myself to sit in the peace and the harmony of the divine. I allow myself to be aware of the times that I stray from that deep wisdom. And in trust and love, I call myself back, knowing that my heart is always trustworthy. My heart always makes the correct decision. My heart is always in alignment with the divine. And in this moment, I hold in my heart all those that I know, all of the Circle's Edge community. And I know that the greater consciousness of this community is the consciousness of love, the consciousness of family, the consciousness of support. I know that all is well. I trust the instincts of my heart. And so I give thanks for all of the good that is transpiring, all of the good that is exposed, all of the good that is percolating into awareness and into the mass consciousness. I give thanks for it. I get out of the way and I await the wonderful, miraculous, joyful way that spirit responds to these thoughts, these ideas.